call this June 18th meeting of the Paducah Planning and Zoning Commission to order. I welcome all of you and ask that you stand with us as we say the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Mr. Summer, call the roll, please.
Mr. Benberry, Mr. Bradford.
Here.
Mr. Morrison.
Here.
Mr. Ramke. Here. Mr. Shadle.
Here.
Mr. Wade.
Here.
Chair Casillas.
Here. Mr. Morrison, I believe you have the minutes.
Yes, ma'am, I do. I move that the reading of the minutes for June 4, 2018 be waived and that the minutes of said meeting as prepared by the Secretary be approved as written.
Second.
Second by Wade. Are there any corrections or additions? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Morrison.
Aye.
Ms. Ramke.
Aye. Mr.
Shadle.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mr. Bradford.
Aye.
Chair Casillas.
Aye. Mr. Shadle, you have our first item of business.
Yes, I do. I move that this commission recommend approval to the Board of Adjustment regarding the application of Michael Mess and Renita Skinner for a conditional use permit to operate in home daycare at 1029 North 11th Street. I further recommend the following conditions be attached. A picket or dog ear type fence shall be installed around the rear yard. A license from the state of Kentucky.
Second by Shramke.
Don't see the applicants here. They was notified to come to both Planning Commission and BOA. I haven't talked to her today, but she was aware to be here to present in case y'all had any questions. So I'll run through what we found in the staff report. What she's asking for is a maximum of 20 children with the hours 6:30 a.m. to 6 p.m., 3 staff members, and she's going to utilize street parking and parking in the rear yard. You can tell from the pictures one of the things lacking is a fence, which is what normally the Board of Adjustment would like to see for daycares to keep, well, for 2 purposes: to keep children from wandering off the property, but also to keep strangers and dogs and things like that from coming up by the kids. I'm not sure if she's actually obtained her state of Kentucky license yet. She has spoken to them up at the Health and Human Services in Frankfort and got her ball rolling on her end, and that is where this request came into the Board of Adjustment.
There is a small fence in the back of this home, it looks like.
I believe it covers her air conditioner.
Yeah, probably.
Is that it?
Yeah.
As far as I know.
Yeah, it is.
Is there a recommendation or requirement for the height of this fence that should be attached to it?
The maximum is 8, but it may be a state of Kentucky standard. I'm not sure about that, Mr. Wade, but I would say at least 4 feet, and we can put that in there as a condition attached to that as well.
I was going to say, I don't think you're going to find an 8-foot picket fence,
Yeah.
but, a requirement of at least 4 feet, I think, would be recommended.
But your recommendation is that the fence only be in the back?
Yes, to make it easier to drop kids in and off on the front. She's proposing people come down 11th, kids go in the house, and then have their playground in the back.
But I'm concerned about safety. I mean, if there's only a fence in the back, the facility would not be fenced in, correct? Aren't usually daycares have fencing around the area that the children will be playing in?
Not all the time. The one that, and I've got 2 specific examples to speak to that. The one that the Board of Adjustment approved on North 9th Street a couple years ago, she just had a fence on the side of her house. And then the brand new daycare that was built about 3 years ago behind Domino's off Jackson Street, they have a fence in the rear, just in the rear, not all the way around.
In reference to what Bob was asking earlier, the state of Kentucky license that will address the number of children that can have in that square footage?
Yes. Okay. They handle daycare, schools, anything like that.
What are the dimensions of the home itself? I mean, if they're going to have 20 children, how large is this home?
I'm not sure the actual dimensions, but it's a little over 1,000 square feet.
And will it be residential and daycare?
Yes, she's planning on living there.
Oh, come on in.
And are there any requirements for the interior of the home as far as space and?
The Kentucky Building Code calls for at least 35 square feet per one kid, but that's something that the state of Kentucky oversees.
So before they would give the license, they would be the ones to approve?
Yes, she has to get
interior
that.
and whether it was
Right.
sufficient?
Yeah.
Now, if we recommend it to the Board of Adjustment, would they act before she has this? Permit?
Yes, she has to have that conditional use permit in hand from them before she can move forward.
So they would not act until she had that conditional use permit?
Right, yes.
Which was going to
yeah.
be
that's what
my
I was
next
asking.
question.
Right.
Why is it coming to us before she has the permit?
The Planning Commission, the way our ordinance is set up, Planning Commission makes a recommendation to the Board of Adjustment. That way, basically, there's two sets of eyes before we approve it on the applicant's end.
More questions, comments?
And just for our edification, R3 zoning, how does that
Yes.
fit in with daycares currently?
Daycares are allowed in any zone in the city.
Okay. That's what I wanted to
Yep.
verbalize.
Any other questions, comments? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Shadle?
Aye.
Mr. Wade?
Aye.
Mr. Benberry?
Aye.
Mr. Bradford?
Aye.
Mr. Morrison?
Aye.
Ms. Shramky?
Aye.
Chair Curtis?
Aye. Mr. Wade, I believe you have the next item of business.
I move that the preliminary subdivision plat for Colgan Properties LLC be approved and that the matter be continued generally pending submission of a final plat incorporating all the requirements made known to the applicant at the conclusion of the hearing.
Second.
Second by Shadle.
This is for a new street with 7 lots. This is where the ophthalmology group was once going to build once upon a time back in 2013. We have a new proposal for the 7 lots, and this is just preliminary. There's nothing I've heard from engineering or planning that says, hey, no, we can't do it, so that's why it's come before you all. We do have a meeting tomorrow with Mr. Goins about some of the comments that we have as far as street width, requiring sidewalks, and a radius, I believe is what we have now, but at this time, we don't see anything that would prohibit the submission of a final plat once those are addressed. And Mr. Goins is here to answer any additional questions you all have.
Jason, I'm assuming all of these lots will come off the new road, the center line of the new road as far as traffic comes.
That's correct.
And there'll be no access from Pecan Court?
That is something that we're going to discuss with engineering tomorrow at this meeting to talk about what lots can have rear access.
Because it looks like from the preliminary plat, there are 2 curb cuts off Pecan Drive and 1 off of Pecan Court. Would those still be, it sounds like your discussions will address whether those remain valid.
That's correct.
Okay. And then, Josh, this was rezoned, the rezoning in July 13 was approved by the City Commission as well?
Yes, sir.
And was there any conditions about the occupancy of this with the ophthalmology group, or was it a general?
It was a general rezone.
Okay.
They did base it on a conceptual plan that the ophthalmology group submitted at the time.
So that is still in force and would not be altered by the fact that they didn't occupy this property.
No, I mean, now that it's rezoned R4, they can subdivide into office park or whatever it may be.
Okay.
And the original entrance from that particular development is the same as the entrance that they currently have here on their plat. I
it's
feel
pretty close.
very certain it is, because I
Pretty
remember they were
close.
trying to line it up with Colonial Drive, so.
Well, and it looks like there's a entrance off of 62 also. Is that something that will be discussed? It's not? What is that cut that I'm looking at?
There is a small curb cut there. And again, that's something that would be discussed tomorrow with engineering as far as access to that lot. There is just a small, like one lane,
Okay,
it's a
so there
very
would
narrow
be
drive.
some kind of a exit there from one of the lots.
Potentially, yes.
It was originally a driveway, I believe. wasn't it?
Probably for a home or
Home,
something years
yeah.
ago, I would say, when the Highway 62 was widened.
It seems like I remember there was discussions that the state had already had discussions that would not be available to the property owners in the future.
That's correct.
State
Is that-
controls that anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, that,
I think that would have to, for commercial purposes, it would have to be widened, so any improvements to it would have to go to the highway department for a permit. So that, of course, the jurisdiction would be theirs, and they may say, no, they don't allow it, or they're, it's their
that's
call.
the discussion I remember from last time, is that, yeah, they'd have to approve it, but they wouldn't approve it.
Yeah, and honestly, I've not spoken to them yet about that, but it may have been part of that. I haven't seen the site plan that the ophthalmology group prepared, but that very well may have been the case back then.
And is there any discussion about access off of Old Pecan Drive that now services another office property next door?
Yes, that is something that we'd like to discuss with engineering tomorrow, about that, having that possibility on a couple of those lots to be served off of Pecan Drive as well, or the old Pecan Drive, I guess you could say.
Right, 3 and 4.
Correct. Pecan Court, I would say, is probably it's already set up for that, so I
Right.
can't imagine that not being allowed. But for lots 3 and 4, that's just kind of open for discussion.
So again, it's coming to us before it's finalized with engineering?
No, it's just a preliminary, which says, yes, you can develop it along these lines, and we're going to let the developer and the engineer know what our final comments are to be addressed on the final plat before it comes back to you all.
Yeah, we have detailed engineering plans now that are in the works for the roadway and all
It
sorts
just
of,
seems a little backwards to me. I mean, usually when we get these, we're not waiting for engineering to,
Not on the preliminary, the way I've always operated in the past, these always come first. The preliminary, there's a preliminary and then the final. The preliminary comes in with just some general ideas of how the lots will be subdivided and generally where the road will be aligned. Once this is approved tonight, hopefully, then we move forward with full-blown engineering plans. And then
And
once
then it
those
comes
are
back to
approved,
us again.
it comes,
Okay.
yeah.
Just as a comment on the discussion about Highway 62, I think it would not be wise to allow any kind of a curb cut off of there, just because it's so close to that intersection and it's such a busy road.
Yeah, I would think they probably would not
Wouldn't.
be
because
permitted
that
to
came
do
up
that.
last time too, that was so
Yeah.
close to the intersection. I know we've had discussion on it.
Comments?
I have one question for Jason. City of Paducah, on the other side of Pecan Drive, as you go around the curve there, is that just that area, that small area on the other side of the street? Is that what that is for?
Yeah, there's just some right-of-way there that for when Pecan Drive was built, that the limits of it aren't really, we didn't define those clearly, but yeah, that's just some right-of-way.
I'm drawing a blank. Is Old Pecan Drive, is that developed all the way through there? Is it, I know it's not showing on here, but is it gravel or is it?
No, it's,
No.
the asphalt drive is still there, and then it
Okay.
stops, and there's a barricade that was put up. You can see where the asphalt, the dashed line stops, and
Right.
there's a barricade right there, so it does not go all the way through anymore.
Okay. It's funny how you drive past something all the time.
Yep.
Couldn't visualize it.
Are all the homes running along Pecan Court vacant now? Are there any occupied along there?
You know, there's an old structure there on Lot
Yeah.
7. It's not shown. That's been vacant for a long time. On the east side of Pecan Court, I'm not real sure, to be honest. That's kind of one, like he says, I've been by there, and I don't know that I pay a whole lot of attention.
Yeah,
But
that's because I think there are 2 or 3
I believe there are
structures
still
I think
some
along
homes
most
that
over
are.
side.
there.
I think there's some that are occupied over there.
Okay.
I believe that was part of the reason for creating Pecan Court and Old Pecan Drive and cutting those off was so that there wouldn't be cut-through traffic there.
But they would still be served.
Exactly. More comments? Questions?
Interesting to see the next one.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Wade?
Aye.
Mr. Benberry?
Aye.
Mr. Bradford?
Aye.
Mr. Morrison?
Aye.
Mr. Emke?
Aye.
Mr. Shadle?
Aye.
Chair Casillas?
Aye. Mr. Bradford, you have our next item of business, the 2400 Adams Street.
Yes, I move that the ROW closure plat for 2400 Adams Street and 2400 Washington Street be tabled until the next regular planning commission meeting.
Second.
Second by Morrison.
The developer wasn't quite ready to move forward yet. He has to work some issues out with JSA as far as granting a sewer easement, is my understanding. When they get those issues worked out, they'll bring it back to you all. So it was already advertised, so
Right.
please
Keeps
keep your
having to
staff
advertise
reports.
again, yes.
Is this just a motion to table generally?
Yes, till the next planning commission meeting.
Okay, so it is to take date certain?
Yes,
Okay.
And you did say we should hang on to this?
yes, please.
Okay.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Bradford?
Aye.
Mr. Morrison?
Aye.
Mr. Emke?
Aye.
Mr. Shadle?
Aye.
Mr. Wade?
Aye.
Mr. Benberry?
Aye.
Chair Casillas?
Aye. Mr. Amke, you have our final item of business.
I move that this commission recommend approval to the Board of Adjustments regarding the application of E.J. Abel for a conditional use permit to teach art classes at 3243 Monroe Street. I further recommend the following conditions be attached. A maximum of 8 people shall be taking the art class at one time. The class shall conclude by 7 p.m. each night. The pickup and drop-off point for children shall be in front of the petitioner's home on Monroe Street.
Second.
Second by Benberry.
Ms. Abel isn't here tonight either, but it's another recommendation to the Board of Adjustment. She teaches, or she would like to teach, an art class 2 nights a week for right now, and this is actually for children. After they get out of school and when parents get off work, that sort of thing. She did have this going on, and I had to nicely send her a letter to that she had to apply to you all because traffic was backing up in the alley behind the house, and there were some complaints stemming from that off North 32nd Street, between North 32nd and North 34th. So she made her application to come before you all.
So she's already teaching classes out of this?
She was until she got my letter
okay.
to cease that activity until the Board of Adjustment approves her after you all. But these are the parameters that she's asking for.
So tell us about your proposal for the pickup and drop-off.
She has a foyer, like a porch in front of her house, that's screened in right here.
Okay.
The way that she has children previously coming in was through the alley. She teaches the art class in her art studio in the backyard. And I had mentioned to her, whenever you make your proposal, be mindful of where children need to be picked up and dropped off, because you're already getting complaints about cars stacking in the alley. So now she's proposing to bring children in through the front door, in case it's raining, stuff like that. They can wait underneath her porch.
That egress out of that alley into 32nd Street is pretty tight.
It is.
Yeah, so it's a little blind right there coming under the railroad pass.
And we thought it was safer for sure for the children to be dropped off.
But
right
she
in front of
did
the house.
consult with the neighbors, and they all said there would be no problem. Is that correct?
She did have a list in there of some that supported, does support the art class.
Yeah.
You know how many students she's had previous during the temporary?
Between 4 and 8.
And just Tuesdays and Wednesdays?
I'm not sure which 2 days she's got picked out. It would just be 2 days a week for now. And she may expand it later, but for now, just 2 days.
So do I understand from this one attachment that the people at 3223 have said no to this? Is that what the notation there means with the arrow?
You're talking about this attachment here?
No, this one.
It's in the
No,
right-hand column.
this page, the list. They have a list over here on the left of a lot of property owners, and on the right, there's one listed that has a no next to it.
And that name is not listed on the page you just had in front of you, the affidavit.
It may be Mr. Wade. I'm looking for that. I know there was one that, particularly one neighbor on the Madison side that did have an issue, but that was mainly with the traffic in the alley.
Right.
So that may be
That's
who
what I'm suggesting.
that was.
Well, I'm confused with that list also because it lists 3223 as saying no, but then 3229, I don't know if that no means for all of those or just that one, because 29 is not on the list that the people have approved. Neither is 35. Oh, no, 35 is. Okay. And 39 is. Okay, so I assume it's only that one person that says no?
I'm not sure if we can
Would have
deduce
been
from
good
that
that the petitioner would have been here.
Yes, I wish she would have been, but she was notified of tonight's meeting, but don't know if something come up or chose not to come.
I'm not sure we can really deduce from that notation that that actually means that person said no.
Exactly.
Because if I'm looking at this correctly, the last page in that attachment, where it seems to say 3223, on that piece of property, it says no name recorded. So it could also be that they didn't know that and they noted
Okay.
it before.
That's right.
They could have moved.
Well, there's a lot of assumptions.
This is a PVA book.
I just circled that particular property because I know the people who live there.
Yeah. This is
And that's
off
why
the
I'm
PVA
going
book.
tomorrow and I'm going to say, do you realize your name is not recorded there for owning that
Oh, wow.
property?
Josh, on that lot 54 to the right of that, is that an easement in there?
Not that I'm aware of. It may be.
You're talking about the 12-foot?
It's 12 feet as opposed to the alley and back is 15. I didn't see that when I went by there.
Let me. Just on based on the GIS property lines, I'm not seeing one that runs through like an alley, like an open
I
right-of-way,
didn't see
but there
one.
may be an
I didn't see
easement.
If I'm looking at the same thing you're looking at, I don't think that's on the subject property here. I think that's a couple of lots down, isn't it? Where you're seeing a 12-foot noted between the 54 and 53. But I believe our lot is 57, with the Abels.
Yeah, that's what the no means on here, because that's lot 11 on the plat, and then she's got it shown here, no name recorded.
Well, we'll be finding out about those folks while their name is.
But regardless, they had the opportunity to show up tonight and register an objection.
Yeah.
Good point, yeah, they would have gotten notice.
Of course, this goes to the BOA
Yeah.
then for the actual hearing.
Well, I'm assuming that this list where the things are marked off is where she's contacted people?
No.
But we don't know,
No,
do
that's
we?
what happens with PVA. Once they sell it, they'll mark a line through there and insert the new name next to it on that.
I see.
Well, that lot where it says no name recorded, that, I can look there, it looks like there is a 3220,
23?
Yeah, it looks like that, so that's probably the lot. And she had a name there,
Okay.
not recorded. Yeah. What they've got a deed for it, so.
Well, I'm concerned that we need more clarification of the neighbors around it. This is too confusing to me. I can't tell what's what.
I'm comfortable making a recommendation to the Board of Adjustment, since they still have to do a public hearing, that those
Perhaps.
things can be cleared up.
Perhaps there could be more clarification by that juncture.
We could add that we suggest that there be more clarification of the
Okay.
neighbors and their feelings on this and their input.
I would have a question too about how many people were noticed about this?
Miss Abel was definitely noticed about this, and it's my understanding that this list that she had was notified as well. The actual public hearing will be at the Board of Adjustment level,
Right.
where
Who will be noticed?
I've got everybody on the entire block
Okay.
noticed
On both sides.
on both sides.
And
including-
even the people behind on the other side of
Yeah.
Madison?
I did, just to be on the safe side,
Okay,
because
that's good.
alley, yeah.
Yes,
That-
exactly.
right, I wanted to make sure that everybody affected by that alley got notice, and so they certainly did for the BOA.
Yes, that's good.
Excellent.
Any more questions or comments? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Amke,
Aye.
Mr. Shadle,
Aye.
Mr. Wade,
Aye.
Mr. Benberry,
Aye.
Mr. Bradford,
Aye.
Mr. Morrison,
Aye.
Chair Crecilius.
Aye. If we have no more business to come before the commission tonight, we stand adjourned. It is 5:58.